Staying consistent in training with your dogs can sometimes seem really challenging when we also live our lives outside of them. I've got 5 tips for you in this video talking all about staying consistent in training so you can achieve the goals that you want to achieve with your dogs. So number 1 is having really clearly defined goals. If you have a sense of what you want to achieve with your dog, that is going to save a ton of time. So you're not just sitting there trying to come up with different ideas of what should I work on during my training session today. If you actually take the time a little bit ahead of time, maybe on a weekend, and write out some either weekly or monthly or multi-month goals that you would like to achieve for your dogs, then that really lays out what exactly you need to work on. So much of my time has been wasted trying to get home from work, figure out what do I want to work on with my own dogs. Personally, I've been working with dogs the entire day. I'm a little bit tired. It's so handy and it's so helpful to already have those goals written out, rather than just having them sit there in my head. If they're written out, it's much easier for me to say, okay, that's what I want to work on today. And that is a clearly defined goal that I want in the future for my dogs. This is also the first step that you have to think about to do an effective training session with your dog. Figure out what your goals for your dog are. It can be as simple as teaching your dog their name or teaching them to respond to their name a little bit easier inside the house first, or as complex as reactivity training out and about with people, other dogs, motorcycles, scooters, whatever it might be. That's a more complex thing. Tip number 2 is I would recommend writing these goals down that you came up with in tip number 1, writing them down and then breaking them into smaller components. For example, with my personal dogs, a big goal that I'm working towards is nail trim. So I can decide whenever they need a nail trim, I can easily just grab my Dremel and trim their nails. I'm not able to do that currently, and training towards that involves a lot of broken down steps. So some of those steps might initially be conditioning the Dremel itself, the new tool that I'm presenting that the dogs aren't used to. The Dremel also makes noise, so I have to counter condition my dogs to the sound of the Dremel, actually get them comfortable with it. Then I have to work on paw handling. Wrigley's really uncomfortable about me handling her paws. We have to work through that. Then when she's comfortable with that, I also have to work towards now paw handling plus Dremel coming towards you, maybe with the sound off first and then with the sound on. You guys see where I'm going with this. So we have to break down a lot of these bigger goals into smaller chunks in order to then achieve the big goal. So in the course of 1 week of training, I might pick 2 or 3 of those goals to work on throughout. But the important part here is that I'm breaking big goals down into small and achievable steps. Tip number 3, don't try to do too much at once. If you're anything like me and a training session is going really well with your dogs, we as people really want to continue. We're like, yeah, let's keep going. Or my dog is doing really well. They're picking up on this. That gets us very excited and we want to push through that. It actually is a whole lot better for our dogs and their memory if we keep training sessions shorter. Anywhere between, honestly, 30 seconds, but let's say 5 minutes and 15 minutes a day is perfect. You could break that up into different chunks and spread that throughout the day. So do 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and so on and so forth. But shorter is always going to be better. If we're doing a really long training session that's lengthy and our dogs are getting tired, they actually are less likely to retain a lot of that information. So shorter is always going to be better. One thing that I do to keep myself honest with the amount of time that I'm training my dogs is I'll set a timer, especially if it's something that I'm working on like nail trims that I really don't want to extend that out so my dogs don't get uncomfortable about it. I set a timer for something like that to maybe 5 minutes. I start my training session. When the timer goes off, I stop my training session. So I can't keep going. Okay, tip number 4 is try to weave your training sessions into other things that you have to do with your dogs every single day. I really like using my walking time with the dogs, that they go on a walk every single day. That is a normal part of my day. That's a normal part of their day. We all enjoy it. But if I can weave their training session for the day into that walk as well, that almost hits 2 birds with 1 stone. They're walking, which is giving them exercise. A lot of times I can also incorporate a play session into that with Fen. That is one of his requirements for the day, is he needs playtime and a little bit more running time than Wrigley does. And my dogs are on long lines, so they're sniffing, so they're getting a lot of mental enrichment from that. And then if I also add training asking my dogs to do different things when we're out and about on the walk. I might teach a new skill. I really like that personally for teaching real life skills and teaching my dogs to listen to me whenever we're out and about. So I like to incorporate training into my walks just in general so that my dogs know to listen to me in that environment. But it also can be helpful with building in that training time. So you get it all done in one chunk of time, and then you can come home and do things that you need to do. Like me filming this video. I walked my dogs beforehand, they got a training session, they're satisfied, and they're good. So now I can sit here and film this video in peace. So like I said, with my dogs out on our walks, they also learn to listen to me. That is a really awesome skill to do. If you incorporate training little bits at a time into your walks with your dogs, that will actually help teach them how to listen to you out and about if you make that a regular thing. Now, my fifth and final tip is building in at least 5 minutes of training with your dogs into your work schedule. This is something that I personally use a whole lot so that it literally is on my calendar. I tend to live my life by my calendar and fill in free pockets of time with random training sessions for my dogs. So I might stick a 3-minute or a 5-minute training session in between clients or after I get home from work. And as soon as I get home, I have a training session planned and it's in my work schedule. So even just writing it down in your calendar, when you're going to do it and what specifically you're going to work on, that piece can be really helpful so that all you have to do whenever you approach that time and it comes up in your calendar is just do it. It's a great habit building strategy, and I would take this in really small 5-minute chunks or less initially, so you're not trying to do this huge life shift all at once. I would also recommend only putting that in a couple times a week to start with, and not like 15 or 20 minutes every single day. That is going to be too much of a drastic change potentially that you're not going to keep up with it in the long run. Smaller is much better when we're building habits, new habits, and us as people as well. So a couple times a week, throw in random 3 to 5 minute training sessions onto your work schedule. Write down what you're gonna do and then actually just do it. And set yourself a timer so you stay honest with it and stop when the timer is done. So I didn't make this a tip, but another suggestion that I have is really taking it easy on yourself. Whenever we're trying to build all these new habits, it's much easier for us if we take it in small chunks. That is also much easier for our dogs as well. If they're not used to training with you on a daily basis, their brains actually aren't going to be able to handle all that much. So doing less is going to be more in the long run. And if you start to build some of this stuff into your schedule, you start small, incorporate fun things in there as well. Don't, only work on like boring nail trims or obedience skills. That can be fun, but throw in a few tricks in there. Throw in some behaviors that you actually just find fun and you want to teach your dogs that can kind of spice up your training sessions a little bit and make you feel motivated to actually want to do them. If you want to learn more about how to teach some cool tricks and how to learn other basic obedience behaviors, check out the rest of the videos on my channel. I've got a ton of them that go over a lot of these basic level skills that you can make super easy and incorporate into your day-to-day training sessions.